Let's start. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So, this is a story of a journey of a startup studio building their first product. Right. And at the same time, creating an MVP delivery system that would allow you to repeat it many times. So there is an expectation that in the next 3-4 years, we will be building 6 products, 6 ventures, and eventually 6 startups, if there is product market fit. So building products is a lot different, especially when there's no business requirements. And so I will show you some lessons learned, some anti-patterns, and while trying to do this journey and do this path, the very strange path we did, by the end, my expectation is that you would have an understanding that in some special conditions, like absence of money, not that much time, completely clueless about what is a product, what the product should be, there are a lot of shortcuts that you can actually take that are counterintuitive, but that somehow translating no harm done and actually a faster way to experiment and do stuff. Right? Most of the stuff I'll be showing is not actually a path, so it's not from zero. It's not going I'll show you a system that somehow each slide will talk about a part of the system, and they all work together to achieve the same goal. At the end, either you will have actually learned something or got to the conclusion that this guy is insane and the stuff he did makes no sense whatsoever. Sorry. Maybe I'll need to do this. So, why continuous delivery? Why is it the topic of this, and why did it make sense for us? There is a growing perception that high-paced software delivery is strongly correlated with high-performance organizations. One of the documents or the reference out there is the State of DevOps report by Puppet and now Splunk. And what they do is they collect a bunch of data, direct data, and they do a scientific analysis on it, and it's becoming pretty clear, this notion and this pattern, that the faster you're delivering software, the most likely you are to be successful in your business. And this is turning out to be any business, because as business tend to become more digitalized, delivering software has becoming a big part of it, right? It's like Goldman Sachs saying that they have a lot more developers than they have bankers and traders. So stuff is changing. This is a bit counterintuitive, but I'm guessing all the developer community can understand it. Maybe not the other guys outside it. And so somehow, continuous delivery is seen as the way to achieve this. And so we saw it as, yeah, that's the thing that we really need to focus on if we're trying to deliver products very fast and be very customer responsive and try to understand what's happening. For that, we need a fast pace. And so, also together with a powerful tool named Lean Startup, so just Google it and go and fetch the book, which is really relevant about what the product is. So for us, it was all about, can we create this framework that allows us to repeat it many times, okay? Okay. So this is just to put you in the mood. So this is not actually that much development, so it's more about product, right, this notion. Who is not familiar with the concept MVP, minimum viable product? Everyone knows it, so that's awesome. So this is a product concept, it's an old one, maybe not that one, 2001. It's about what is the minimal set of features that the product needs to have in order to be interesting enough for early adopters to buy it. And that's the original concept. It then pivoted into the minimal viable test or the minimal viable experiment, which is what is the least amount of thing I can do to validate an assumption, a product assumption. If I don't build anything, that's the best it could happen to me. And if I can reach a conclusion on this is a bit anti, but the notion is that so I have this product assumption, I need to validate this product assumption. And builders are about building stuff. And the notion here is, can I not build anything and reach this conclusion, right? I want to reach this conclusion if this assumption holds valid or not, right? So this is going, this is a push for me to end up in time, right? So let me give you a practical example. So the first product, the product we're talking about mostly, it's a marketplace, a tutoring marketplace. And the notion, this is, stop playing around with your mobile phones. So I'll stop it. And the notion here is, so you have plenty of assumptions, right? Would people buy sessions online? Would tutors would like to be a part of this platform that offers a service? And so we started with that one. So the first one was, would actually tutors enroll in this platform and become service providers for us, right? So what we did was, without having any product, we created a landing page and asked them to sign up. Right? So there's no way, so if they didn't even sign up, I wouldn't have to build the product. So it was great either way. If they did actually sign up, well, I would have to build the product. If any of the other assumptions that I also needed to validate would fail, I would quit the project, had a bunch of guys which had already signed up, and yeah, but then, why? It was an experiment. That brand, maybe it's dead. I'm not using it anymore. Yeah, so I thought it's a bit, so the way is, so without building the product, we actually come up with a notion and a way to understand if there was traction. Especially because there was a high value in this market, because there is tutor scarcity. So it was a big assumption, right? Would they actually enroll? So in a few months, we enrolled thousands of tutors, and as a result, we actually had to build a product. So, yeah. So, but the business canvas is filled with assumptions, and we just jumped from that one to the other one, right? So you start seeing that there is the need to do this fast and repeat it. So the end goal, can I actually, so on this slide, so can I actually do almost nothing and draw some conclusions for my product, for my customer, for my growth engine, for my pricing, for whatever, right? So for pricing, you could actually have just AdWords. We did a bunch of experiments which were AdWords, and would people react to AdWords for any kind of things, okay? Without having actually anything. So now I'm stopping the slides so that they do not go away. Whoa. Oh, I did it. Okay. So I'm going straight to deployment automation because of the irony in it, right? I've just talked about doing the least as possible, and deployment automation is the core in a continuous delivery system, and it requires you to invest a lot of time in it. And so the funny part is that, yeah, but the guy just told me that most of the experiments should have the least effort as possible. Yeah. But why do I need a deployment automation? So I need, and this is clear a decision to invest time and effort. I need this because I want to do many and many and many experiments. It's just because of that. So this is actually, so you're always juggling, right? You're always juggling what to invest your time with. And this is the place where we invested time with, okay? And everything else was about being as lean and as minimalist and as less effort as possible, but not here, because we wanted to repeat this over and over and over again. If I wanted to give you some number, for instance, this first project, we were doing our average for the whole duration of the project was 2.5 builds to production per day per developer. Okay, so on average, each developer would deliver to production 2.8 times. For the new product we're building now, the average now is 3.8, which is, I'm guessing we're doing too much deployment. The industry recommendation is 3. So if you can actually reach 3 deployments to production by day for development for a day, that's where you're at the peak. So I would be suspicious about guys getting to 3.8. So that was it, right? So this was the investment part, so let's move on. If I can. Let's talk a bit about process. So I'm not going, so everyone knows Scrum, everyone knows Kanban, everyone knows all this, Agile. So it's always Agile, so there's no other way. So we didn't start it by trying to use waterfall, wonder why. But when you go in a fast pace, what you deliver, so I'm assuming everyone is familiar with any of these concepts and has been doing it for long. After some time, we got to the notion that we were actually sprintless. There was no sprint there. And there's no sprint because if I'm delivering stuff every day to production multiple times, then the sprint is not the unit of work, right? We also come up to the notions that we didn't like the roles of Scrum. We also got to the notion that we didn't like not being able to change scope during the project. Because if I'm getting feedback from the customer, and yeah, that no longer makes sense, why should I have developers delivering stuff 2 weeks from now or 1 week from now? That no longer makes sense, right? So in the end, it was about, we would have multiple iterations on the same thing, on the same, let's say, weekly planning. So we were doing weekly planning. We were doing a bunch of stuff that we find interesting, so daily stand-ups really works for us. Retrospectives. We're doing retrospectives once a month, and man, retrospectives were great. If you do it well, we tried multiple exercises, and we never picked one as a decision because we kept changing, because it's funny when the exercise is not the same. It unlocks some more stuff, and it's awesome to diffuse team stress. Retrospectives really work for us. So we had a bunch of stuff, so I would say retrospectives are monthly, stand-ups daily, planning weekly, product meeting to support the planning weekly, and that's kind of it. Okay. So, estimations, right? So, this is a tough one. So let's see if you can you can deal with this one. So, I didn't tell you much about myself, but I worked in pretty complex companies before, and until I got tired, and so I know all about estimations, right? I've used story points, I use t-shirt sizes, I use function points, I used effort judgment by using expert judgment, I used effort by similarity of projects. So you had this huge database of all past projects, and you try to fit the new requirements into some of them, and then you say, oh, it will take this time. I had budget driven, so it's actually, or time boxed, so all types of estimations. And so we started with the planning poker exercise, like most of the guys do, and started like, let's do this the right way, and story points on stories, right? So at the end of the session, right, there was a lot of stress. The differences between the effort estimations, so using the Fibonacci scale, Fibonacci scale. And yeah, there was a lot of stress, and there was so we try, okay, let's pivot it into still story points, but on tasks, right? When we did story points on tasks, there was no longer stress. It was pretty clear, so we would break each story with multiple tasks, very keen, very obvious to everyone. We even have a developer guy, imagine a front-end or a designer saying that a back-end task would take a certain amount of time, and he got it right? So it was awesome, but it would take us half a day. Okay? Half a day in a 4-day week, so 12.5%. And so at the end, the notion was, what if this is pretty revolutionary, right? What if we don't do estimations? What if we assume that we break the stories in such a small bits that on average, each one of the tasks has a clear owner and has an average effort of one story point? And we started doing over the weeks. And what we knew was if there was a lot of bugs, we would have a lot more tasks somehow. But if there wasn't that much bugs, they would really, there was no stress, no time spent on estimations. No. Does this work on everything? I'm not sure. Did it work for us? Sure it did. Okay? It was less one morning or one Monday morning or one Monday afternoon discussing how much would it take any task to be performed. Did it make us fly? Yes. At a certain point in time, yes, because you look into this story, it's a huge story. If you go and break it up in subtasks and everything else, and then man, this is impossible, we cannot do it. In the end, if you go bold and you break it into small tasks and you keep delivering one by one, I think sometimes we lost and sometimes we won, and we were doing less estimations, okay? So I'll give you some moments to think before I move. Who breaks the task? So maybe mostly me, but everyone was entitled to do it, actually. So it was not about, maybe on some other slide, I'll talk a bit about the team, okay? Let's wait to the test. On the test slide, I'll talk a bit about the team for you to understand it, okay? So this is a tough thing to show here because everyone knows all about this, but I can never stress it out, and so I'm talking about this also. Somehow it's like, so Kanban boards. So everyone knows Kanban boards. Who doesn't use Kanban boards? So everyone else uses. So it's very good to do denial questions because all the guys that wouldn't say anything are on my side also. Yeah. So Kanban boards. So Kanban boards really work for us as a communication tool. Is awesome, right? It tells you all at any point of time any second, any minute, what's the state of the project, which tasks are in what state, and who's doing it, and where people are spending time, and what's the feature that includes these 5 tasks, how close it is to get delivered. It allows you to coordinate tasks because of these dependencies. You can actually see some aggregations there, and you see who's doing what, and somehow you could come to the notion, oh man, you should be working on a different task because this user story is going further, is expected to be delivered before the other one. So it becomes really clear. It allows you to identify bottlenecks, and it minimizes work in progress. So the limit work in progress. Why is the limit work in progress really relevant? Because when you are into fast delivery, there is this lean concept and this notion that fast delivery is actually about getting the story to the customer, getting immediate impact, right? It's fast delivering is actually getting to the customer. So instead of going to the industrial notion that, oh, I'm producing 10,000 cars a month, right? We would prefer to the notion that, well, maybe we produce 8,000 cars a month, but after those other 10,000 have to wait 1 month, and we deliver the first 100 after 1 day, and then 1,000 after 2 days, and then, so the notion that you're getting immediate impact. What's the advantage of getting this immediate impact is that you get customer feedback a lot sooner. So you close the feedback loop. And for us, which are kind of clueless what works and what does not, and keep tweaking conversion and keep tweaking signups and onboarding process and all that stuff, customer feedback is really important. So work in progress is considered a kind of a waste, and waste is what? Waste is the notion that by doing context switching, you're losing time. By having people doing multiple stuff at the same time, you need to communicate further, and you lose time, so more meetings, more everything. And there is the handoff delay, so I'm ready now to grab the next task. The other guy didn't finish because we're doing multiple things at the same time. So reducing WIP is a big deal, and the Kanban board is the way to actually visualize it. So especially when you go and establish limits on each lane, and you say that you cannot have this amount of stuff. So we really go for, and it's even more like a funnel. Our Kanban board becomes like a funnel, and we have an expectation that the closer the thing is to the task, is the activity to the end, the faster it should accelerate in order to get there. Okay, so this is it. This is maybe the less interesting. Now, let's talk about a little bit more technical, more, not that much, but yeah. So, Git flow. Who knows Git flow workflow, branch workflow? Yeah, so everyone knows. Who still uses it or uses it? Maybe still is bad for you. So, okay. So, we didn't actually start with Git flow because we already knew some stuff didn't work for us. But then we didn't actually ended up in trunk-based development, which is a different approach. So the key things that we really homed in doing is, so by starting with Git flow, the conclusions were the following. So maybe I'll start with that. So we'd noticed that tickets would pile up in the staging environment or the testing environment because they somehow, you were grouping stuff in the development branch, and then you push it to release, and only when you have a stable set, you would move to a release branch, wherever, and get it deployed. And then you would have to wait, and then there's bug fixing and stuff. And then you have stuff that it's already ready, tested, and awesome, ready for the customer, but it's waiting for bug fixing to finish on some other feature that it's locked down on that one, right? So you're really release-based and not able to deliver stuff. It also created an impact on developers, which was another good one, which was, there was this notion that there was a black hole in the testing stage, and the developer's work was done when you would push it into the testing stage, right? And some superior thing would go there and test all that and say accepted, and only then would get to production. Yeah, it didn't work for us. It kept the developers unhappy, and it added delay. So the conclusion was, we kind of knew it, right? Is no more release. There's no release branch. There is no development branch. There is only master, right? So I'm lying, because if there was actually only master, there would be a trunk-based development, more likely. But so all the tasks that have a meaningful impact in production. So eventually some tasks, some subtasks will die in the feature branch. But most of the meaningful tasks, like a bug, would be born in the master branch. There will be created, I don't know, a feature branch or a bug. And then you would pull requests, and that's the bad part that we couldn't get around. So because we had a CI which was not that awesome, we needed to deploy it to a test environment. In order to do it, we were still grouping stuff, but we were not closing stuff. So we had a feature branch. You would pull requests to a staging branch. As a result, it will get deployed. It will be validated individually. And then if it was validated individually, it would be pushed to master. So what's wrong with this? There's a bunch of stuff that's wrong with this. One of them is we're ignoring a best practice, which is the build stuff that you test is the one that gets to production. We're not doing that. We're building again, because what we're doing is we're looking into each of the feature and as a patch that we apply to an environment where there's multiple patches running, and then we grab that one, almost like a patch. So patch is not the right word, and then we patch it to the master and deploy it to production independently. So if you really, so this means that you need to be perfect in a set of things, right? Which is no whip. So you shouldn't have contamination between stuff happening in the test environment. Of course, you'll have some conflicts with master if bad stuff happen, but you should minimize whip. And you should really trust your build system. And in the end, by doing it over and over and over again, it became pretty clear. The other thing is that the pull request needs to be minimal. So on average, we would have like each pull request would have like between 5 and 50 lines of code changes. It's one thing. I will talk more about this on a test scenario. So if you go by a set of rules and a set of sequences, you can actually pull this off. I'm not glad with it. I'll talk about later on another slide. So after this, what changed? Whoops. So after this, what changed? So ticket ownership became clear. So each guy would start with one ticket in one side, and his goal was to get it to the other side. And in the middle, he needed to talk to two persons. One person to review his pull request, and a second person, a third party, to verify that his change was working. And I'm saying his change was working because, so I'll talk about tests later, but because the expectation is that the pull request was, the pull review, the code review was relevant enough to identify that there was no side effects. And because it's very minimal, you can actually pull this off, okay? And in the end, a developer felt like he was in power. He could actually grab a task and take it to the end in a single day or less, okay? So this was the, by dropping Git flow, this is what you could achieve. So another funny one, so test. Yeah. So some guys are already preparing the shotguns and the canyons and stuff. So I also know a lot, yeah, I've been in a lot of environments with 4 test environments and all sorts of tests. And somehow shit still hits the fan and stuff happens. So there is tests for any tastes you might have. Now, there is even philosophies built around tests, like TDD and BDD, right? And it's awesome, right? So, but our question was, and that's always our question. That's why I talked about MVP before, right? Our question was, what's the minimal amount of tests that I can get away with before I run into troubles? This is a tough one, right? And why am I asking this question? I'm asking this question because how many customers do I have? 0. Right? So how many, then I start having some, right? But how many, is this feature that I've just implemented, is this feature going to have a long life? Hell not. I'm not sure, I need to understand it, I need to deliver it, I need to verify it, I need to get analytics, I need to do all stuff, and I need to do this fast, right? And so, what if I build the tests when I need it? That's the whole goal. So, imagine, this means what? This means what? That's why I'm really keen into not having a sprint fixed, because this breaks apart planning. So, scope creep is my friend, which is the notion that, oh, I got to this roadblock, I really need tests here, I need to add them. That means that the other story, which I was planning to do, or somehow at the beginning of the week I said I would do, I will not be doing that, right? This means you need to be a lot more flexible, but somehow, and I'm an engineer, right? So really, this was really, so every time I would go home feeling like itchy, and in the end, when you try stuff up and people are testing your product, and they are early adopters, and they are really keen to help, and you have everyone on board, because our product team is not developers, our product team is growth hacker guys, and the finance person, and so everyone is and they are all testing also. So I would say I'm outsourcing manual tests to others while protecting developers, okay? And that's it, right? So we end up doing the following. So, and here I'll talk a bit about the team. So what we have, and most of the guys don't have this luxury, right? I have guys which have been doing this for some time, and they are very experienced, right? So when they build code, they are already protected about the code they build, okay? And by doing so, we can assume we can survive with little tests. Also, they have design ownership, which means the following. So the guy is actually designing the solution. So it's not like there was an architect or some other guy imagining, and then you need to control if the junior developer is not able to deliver as expected or does not understand the technology well. You don't have that. So we have the guy building the code, which was actually the guy designing the solution, and he's implementing it. And he wants it to be as good as possible. Sorry, it keeps, maybe I'll, again. So experienced developers, extensive pull request review for side effect analysis. So also, we had embedded static code analysis and linting and style codes, everything in a build pipeline. So you wouldn't have, when you're doing code review, it was not about if they use the camel case in the variable or shit like that, right? See, it was about actually understanding what's the impact of those 5 lines of code, right? Remember, we prefer to deliver to production 1,000 times 5 lines of code than 5,000 lines of code once, okay? And so extensive code review, pull requests minimalist. It's a thing I've told already. Each ticket was manually validated by a third party. So we were outsourcing this to some of the other team members, which was awesome, right? They get to role play as customers. We delayed test automation, like I said. And what happened was, one day, we started looking to our Slack channel, and strangely enough, there was no signups happening, right? Yeah, and that channel was usually filled up with signups. And for 3 hours, we didn't have signups in production because it wasn't working, okay? That was the time that we need to test this, right? And so we built automated tests for the key features of the platform, which was sign up, log in, schedule a session, and purchase a session. Okay? And this was done at the API level, so it's kind of black boxing on top of the API. It's not actually integrated tests, but yeah. And it was automated in line with the build pipeline, so it would get executed every time you'd get there. Okay? And that was the key decision point. You can only do this when. We also did another thing, which is a really thing that it really works for us. I don't know if it works, which is we have real-time monitoring on everything that happens in production. When I say everything, right, on product, real-time monitoring, because system is normal, right? We do it. What we do is we capture every exception, and we generate a ticket on unique exceptions, and we push it to Slack, which means so. We have a developer, and there's a guy logging into our website and doing something. He gets an exception. The Slack channel says, man, this user is in trouble. There is a ticket if it's a unique event, a new one, in Jira saying there's a bug for you to fix. And so by being extremely reactive, we deal with the fact that we're going with almost no network, no net protection net, okay? So yeah, extremely reactive. I don't know if you guys are doing this already. So imagine capturing any exception that takes place, and yeah, eventually you are. Okay. Yeah. So another thing. So this is a list of tools. So I'm not much into tools, but these are the tools we tested, and somehow user analytics is really the most important thing, and building within your product the ability to track everything that takes place and everything that happens is tough enough. And there's a bunch of guys doing tools, and there's this and there's a lot more. So don't take this as a reference. We tried a bunch of them. And some of them are competitive, and they really deliver on the promise that you know what the user is doing, right? For instance, Hotjar. Hotjar is a voyeur's dream. So product managers love it. They go and they see a movie. It's like a point of view of what the customer is doing, and they see the mouse going, the clicks happening, and everything happening. And it's really, yeah, product guys love it. Then there is, for instance, Google Tag Manager. Google Tag Manager is a coder's dream. So you load a bunch of JavaScript into your app, and then there's no more coding there's no more product guys saying, oh, I want to know everyone that clicks here, and I want to know. No, they just go into Google Tag Manager backend and say, I want to capture this click. We just need to provide them eventually the name of, they don't even need that. They have a real-time thing. They can be clicking stuff and seeing what's happening and capturing all events. And they can say, oh, I want to track this click. And they push this code into production automatically. And you didn't write a line of code. Of course, there is a toll you pay on performance. But then, yeah, it's getting the mix right. So if you have guys that, oh, I want to track everything, your application will become slow, right? Mixpel and Intercom, for instance, it's the Google Analytics with user data. So Google Analytics refuses to have user data there, right? So it's on their user policy and all that stuff. Also refuses Google Tag Manager to have user data. And so the other guy said, oh, we offered to keep all the user data. So in the end, what you can do with those is you can get, not only you can see what they did, and you can see who the guy is, right? You can track the sign up, you collected a bunch of data. So it's like a copy of your user database on a remote place, if you trust it. And then you have Optimizely and Google Optimize and Instapage, which are really ways to do experiments and tests with little effort from the developer team. Again, you upload some code, and they can do CTA experiments, like would people click more if it says this, would people click more, and do A/B testing and everything with little effort from the development team. So again, it's protecting the development. So the developers didn't have to create a full analytic systems. They didn't have to keep, oh, man, it's telling me I should move on. So reflection day. So reflection day is a case of serendipity. If you know, the concept is when something kind of happens by accident, but it's positive on you. And by being open to these opportunities, you get to learn something. So what happens on our team was we had some guys, some staff members, which were unavailable one day of the week. And that's a pretty strong constraint, right? After many iterations, we homed into this notion. Remember, I had talked about the 4-day week planning, right? And so it's because of this, right? And so we got to the following conclusion, like, what does this mean for us, this circumstance you are in? So you can, there's a lot of companies saying stuff. We always do the Friday afternoon for personal projects, or we always do stuff. And a lot of the times this is just a conception. Some of the companies start with this and then it didn't work that much. For us, it was pretty clear. So Friday was a day where we would do the following things. So because we are a startup studio, we would do ideation on new products, ideation, market research, business canvas. So we're away from the product for some time. We would do also continuous improvement. So we would look into the week, how it went, the issues we faced, and what can we improve. Eventually, it would be the conclusion that we need to do more tests, or we do more. So we were tweaking the process on itself. Also, we would try to look into product insights. So we use the tools to collect some product insights. We're doing it mostly every day, but this was a closing day. And in the end, there was also closing some loose ends and personal projects, okay? So reflection day really worked for us. Maybe it's not that easy to pull this off. And it happened for us because we had this limitation and we turned this constraint into a positive thing. So next step. So because we're building other ventures, so the question here is, so I told you a story about all these continuous improvements we did on each stage, right? But there are some stuff that you delay to the next venture, and this is a collection of the ones. So one of them is headless CMS. So we have these guys changing copy all the time, and because we didn't have a CMS, and we were not building a CMS, and we will not be building a CMS, right? But making it code and still going through all this process, it takes time, even if you automate everything. So a really thing we need to consider in the future is actually this, is having a headless CMS included on our product, added to our tech stack, that would allow a product manager, a product owner, whatever, to do copy changes, and a copywriter to do copy changes with little involvement from the development team. This was one. Another one was more infrastructure as code. So we had automated everything from the deployment perspective, but the assumption was that we would use, or at first, we started by having AWS awesome user interface to create the clusters where we'll spin out our containers and everything, right? And then after a while, we come up to the conclusion that, yeah, it worked first, but if we need to do this multiple times, we need to take it to the extra mile. So on the new product, we already did that, okay? It was, again, a lot of investment also, but AWS UI, VPS and ALBs and all that stuff, yeah, it's tough. We need to further build automation and tool integration. So we can still detect that so we have this source code versioning, source code tool versioning, and we have the ticket, and somehow when we do a pull request and review it and get it deployed, the ticket should automatically move to the next stage on the Kanban, right? And that's reasonable enough, and we need to figure out a way to do it, and that's eventually what it's one of the integrations that we pull. The other thing we dislike is the two pull requests. What I would really like to is to do a single pull request to master, and in the middle get it merged to a staging environment and get it deployed, and doing a code review based on the fact that the tests have already happened successfully, for instance, right? Which supports my code review in the process, right? So that's also some automation we think we really feel. The other two things that we feel we need are a bit different. So one of them is a better hypothesis validation framework. So to tell you a story, I told you how we built this page for this landing page for onboarding tutors, right? There was some effort there. We had prior tests being done with almost no effort, trying to understand if tutors would like the idea, and with Instapage or anything like that, and we were unsuccessful. Okay, and the issue with that is that we didn't have a clear success framework in place. So how many guys are enough? How many users clicking that is enough for me to draw the conclusion that it's a go or it's a no-go, right? So we should improve our hypothesis validation framework. Validated learning is harder than you think, and you keep second-guessing everything, right? Was the execution a mess? Was the experiment not well designed? Is the data significant or not? Another thing, and the last one, is again, monolith versus microservice decision framework, right? So that's a tough one, because if you want to go fast, so you have a monolith with a framework that gives you ORM and everything, and its magic happens, and you write very few lines of code. Let's say that this is a quick win, right? But in a longer term, decoupling is actually a de-risking strategy. So buying, splitting does, and also if there is an expectation of reusability for other projects, it's also a positive thing. So we should have a decision framework to support our decision, because every time we are building something, we need to understand if we should invest more by building a microservice, or we should use and stick with the framework we use and keep it monolith. On the project, we kept leaving it as it was and really going for the fast pace with little investment. On the new one, we are no longer doing that, and it's becoming clear, okay? So these are, yeah, stuff we would do on future ventures. Takeaways. So there's a few. Maybe I'll just raise some sound bites and yeah, you go with it. So I've already been talking for plenty of time. So avoid building stuff is one. This is not the builder's way, and especially hard for developers, right? But yeah, clearly that's a takeaway. You should try to avoid, because you want to build what really makes sense. Another one is building perfect stuff that no one wants. Yeah, that's the worst waste there is. And so, yeah, you gotta watch and track and yeah, ignore all that privacy stuff when you're learning with your customer, right? But I'm joking. But you need to track and what's happening, because again, asking customers most of the time is not enough. Customers will tend to answer what they try to be positive. They will not, it's not about what they actually say, it's more about what they actually do, right? And in the end, a lot of the times they'll say, oh, I would love to have that feature, and then they will never click it and never use it, because in theory it makes sense, in practical terms, not really. So it's all, so tracking. Kill dogmas, right? So that's another thing. So you should question everything that you do automatically. So you look into stuff you do, and everything that you do automatically, I think you have two ways to deal with it, right? One way is, maybe it's a waste, I shouldn't do it. And the other way is, this is really needed, it should be automated. Because humans should not be doing stuff automatically. And that's, so look into this. And a lot of the times people are just doing stuff because they have been doing stuff that way. Automate everything that you keep repeating. There is a bonus at the end, especially when you repeat it multiple times. Okay, Kanban board is your friend. Okay, that one is. Tests, right? Find your minimal setup, test setup, and improve as needed. This is, maybe this is, again, a bit counterintuitive, but if you don't know yet what the customer wants, if you don't yet have that much customers, if you do, yeah, there's no reason to because even there is an additional overhead. Every time you re-implement something and every time you iterate, you need to go and change the test, right? So it's not about writing tests once, it's about also keep changing them. So yeah. And the other one is maybe the key one is let developers or be developers. So drop the red tape, stop wasting developers' time. In the end, yeah, product will be better if we spend more time developing stuff and getting stuff to the customer. And yeah, and that's it. Let me see. So, questions? Not many questions. Man, I was hoping for guys to say, oh, this is crap. This makes no sense. Go. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so it's a personal thing, right? Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay because my explanation will be kind of strange for you. Maybe what pushed me over the edge is exactly the path I did, right? So eventually a lot of the guys would not feel that because they never went into an extremely complex, I don't know, 600,000 organization with a delivery team in India and with so many stages of testing and CMMI 5 and CMMI 3 and one line of code, 10 lines in a spreadsheet. One line of code, 10 lines in a spreadsheet. When you go over this, at a certain point of time, yeah, so you need to leave it, right? And maybe I'm doing something wrong, right? And that's aha moment is when you change, right? But a big part of it is not doing consulting also, right? It's about moving from consulting to product, right? Which really also changes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'll need to try that. How big is the team? That team that we're talking about, there was 2 designers. It was big, that one. Now we're going leaner, smaller. 2 designers, 1 front end, 2 back ends. The back end, they were having multiple roles. So one of the back end was turned into a product owner, and and the other one was doing all the ops. So yeah, when you have frameworks in the back end, what we notice is that the handiwork is more on the design part because everyone else is using more and more frameworks to accelerate development. So the back end has ORM and everything, so they design a table and magic happens, APIs are born. You can use anything, right? I can talk about the technology we picked. So we are pretty much into AI. So we're using Python and Django. But it doesn't mean anything, right? You could be doing whatever. On the front end, we're using Angular. Just because it's friendlier to the designer and to the integration, right? So assets are, HTML and CSS are separate, and that really pushes it. So there's no notion that developers need to do HTML and CSS somehow. Yeah, but then again, it's whatever. It's not about the tech stack, right? More.
When you're doing a complex feature, how do you make a pull request of 5 or 50 lines if the next code you write depends on what you just did?
So what you do is you push that one to production. And then you branch from master.
And if no one can review your code at that moment?
No one can review your code. If no one can review your code, you will not review anyone else's code, right? So it's...
So you stop working?
No, you are a team, right? It's about everyone is on the same boat, right? Everyone's on the same boat. So it's everyone is looking after each other. This is not corporate working, right? So it doesn't... It's pretty different, right? So you can really count on your team members. And the same way you expect another guy to review your code, he expects you to review his code. And there's no way out of it. There's not a manager or an architect that reviews your code. No, it's your teammate, right? And you review his code. Yeah, so maybe people are hard, right? I know. But you can ask some guys. You can ask some guys there. Those guys laughing, so they have to review each other's code. And I would say that if there was a guy saying on strike, I will not review code, his tickets would never get to production, and he would lose at the end of the week. Right? Yeah. So I didn't talk much about DevOps and all that stuff and all the notion that everyone is on the same boat. So our retrospectives are really awesome for that. So one of the retrospectives is also there's guys coming and are really taking it. But we can talk later if you want to. Okay. Thank you.